Well, hi there, my name is Lucas, and today I want to welcome you to the second part of my review of the Blackmagic cinema camera, in which we will finally take a look at the footage. We want to look at the difference between DNxHD and the ProRes compressed materials. Then we want to take a look at the dynamic range, what we can record and what not. We want to take a look at the sharpness and the detail this camera records, and of course how well this camera can perform in low light. So to spice this up a little bit, I did some comparison shots with the Canon 550D or T2i and my Panasonic GH2, so we have a little bit to look at and for the comparison, and of course to spice it up even more, I wanted to give you the ability to download every single clip, to look at this yourself. If you think I really suck at this or whatever, you can take a look at the raw clips straight from the camera. So it might be possible that this video gets a little bit longer than usual, and maybe you're not interested in everything. So I did some sort of chapters down in the description that you can click at, so you get to the right position in the video, so you don't have to search for it yourself. And this way you can look just at things you like and you're interested in. Of course, you're free to watch the entire video at home. What we don't want to look at today is the RAW feature. I mean, RAW is great and everything, but I think there are already so many resources online that I don't need to do something. Therefore, I really want to concentrate on the compressed formats. So the Canon camera was set up with the flat picture styles. This is because I really like the flat picture styles, and this particular one gives me really much dynamic range. However, the result you can get from a Canon camera can differ from picture style to picture style. I just want to give you an impression what this camera is capable of. So please don't be angry if I didn't use the picture style you would have used. We have to do some comparison, and I cannot use every picture style in this comparison, so I hope you understand this. The GH2 was also modified for this test. It's not the stock firmware on it. I used the Cake 2.3 hack, which basically doubles the bitrate that is recorded from this camera. I know there are much better hacks, which much better quality. However, I don't own so fast SDHC cards which would be needed. So I hope you understand this, and again, this is only for the impression, so you can see what results you can expect at some point. So I think that's enough for the intro. Let's hop in right away. We want to use After Effects today, so it's a little bit easier for me to show you the things I want to show you in there. If you want to do real grading work, I would always suggest you to use DaVinci Resolve, which gets provided with the camera. But enough of the talking for now, let's get started. So let's start with looking at the ProRes and the DNxHD files. You might assume they should look the same, but let me tell you they don't. There's a slight difference, and let's take a look. So we have the ProRes file here and the DNxHD file here. So let's just take the ProRes file and put it into a new composition and do the DNxHD file on top. So this one is a bit short, but it will do for now for this comparison. As you can see, there's a slight different color or contrast, and I guess I don't know why this is actually, but I guess it's because of the QuickTime Gamma box. You can read a lot about that on the internet. However, let's draw a mask on the DNxHD footage, so we have some split screen here for now, so we can see the difference. Well, I cannot tell you why this is, but I can tell you how we can fix this actually, because there's no information missing in any of the files. We need an effect called Color Profile Converter. We drag it onto the ProRes file for now. So when we are in the settings, we leave everything as it is, but for the output profile, we select the HDTV Rec 709 16:235 option. And as you can see, suddenly it looks the same. Actually, the same works in the different direction from DNxHD to ProRes, so don't change the output profile but the input profile. So again, this just works fine. I think, but this is an assumption, I don't know it actually. The 16:235 is called legal range, and I guess that DNxHD somehow records directly into the legal range. However, as we work in an 10-bit codec, this doesn't make any big difference, so you can see this is virtually the same. This is the same for Mac computers actually. I tried this on my MacBook and it's just the same. This is not a big issue, just so you know about this. As a PC person, I would mostly shoot in DNxHD personally. However, the rest of this video is also shot in ProRes. And yeah, let's move on to the next step. So, with the part of the dynamic range, we want to start with the footage we shot in the original review over the body, for the body. And yeah, this is the scene. As you may remember, the beard on the screen was completely blown out as we watched it in the video. Dynamic range. Also, this ice box, this is ice cream actually, box was totally blown out and we had nearly no detail in the white zones. But now we have an extremely flat image, which is not nice to look at, but this is how log works. However, let's get a curves adjustment. So we simply can look a bit at the details for this. Now let's drag it down, and as you can see, there's a whole lot, a whole lot detail. For example, in the beard. This is out of focus now. However, as you can see, there's really much detail left. Really outstanding is the ice cream box actually, because we can see when we drag this way down, there's not a single bit of this ice cream box that is clipped, even though it's a heavy reflection on there. And even here, the reflections from the sewing machine are not clipped, even if it might be. You might have thought that, but it's not clipped. We have information in there. And then let's take a look at the lens here, at the lower reflections from the UV filter and this reflective plastic ring. When we drag this really down, you can see that this does not look nice. So we have some color that comes up, some magenta, we have artifacts. It's not really much detail in there. However, this information is there and not clipped. And I guess this is something not really possible with a DSLR camera. However, we really have a much dynamic range to work with, and also we have a very clean image. And so to show you what I mean with this, we will move on and now take a look at comparisons between different cameras. So for the comparison, for the dynamic range, I choose the Canon 550D or T2i in America with the flat 11 picture style. Of course, you may use a different picture style for your work. However, for this comparison, I think you will get the idea of what I want to show you. I did not use the GH2 for this test just because the GH2 doesn't have a really good dynamic range, not even compared to a Canon DSLR. So in this case, I wanted to leave it out because it wouldn't show us a benefit, because we already know it's worse than the Canon DSLR. However, so let's get started. Before we touch this footage, this is, as you can see here, this is trillions of colors plus. This means we have a higher bit depth than 8-bit, in this case 10-bit footage. So what we want to do is also we want to work in more than 8-bit at least. So we click on this 8-bit button here, and let's get it to, I like to work in 32 bits, but you can also work of course in 16 bits. I like to work in 32. So okay, let's get started. So let's start for this scene with looking at the Canon footage. I tried to match the field of view in each shot. Didn't work out too well, however, you will get the idea. So this is one of the picture styles for Canon cameras that has the most dynamic range that you can get. May not look perfect, but it will show you what I want to show you. So however, it's a bit hard to expose these the same. Actually, I even use the same color balance, white balance. However, yeah, didn't work out that great, and it's a bit hard to expose them the same. But it's not that important for this part. So, talk too much here. Let's get a curves adjustment. What I will do for now, we'll make a new solid by hitting Control and Y. Call this curves, and when we hit this button, then it's an adjustment layer actually. So we have an adjustment layer. We can also do this with layer new adjustment layer or Control Alt and Y, but I like it this way because it's a bit faster for me at least. So let's take a look at the footage. Finally, haha. So let's drag it down here. And as we can see on the left side here, this is completely blown out. So we don't have information that it turns a native gray, so we don't have artifact there. This simply means it's flipped. Same here, and as you can see in the wall, when we drag it down like this, maybe when we wanted to use this wall because it was very blown out, we don't have much detail here. It's really not great. In motion it's even worse. You can see in motion this looks very bad. We cannot use this wall. We have some information here, but it's not really any use to us. When you look at the navigator up here, you can see that some channels are clipped, not every channel, not at every point, but we're nearly clipped. However, if you don't know this, it's clipped when it's 0. If it's below 0, it's not clipped. So back to it. So as you can see, it's not clipped, but it's really not usable in any way, at least not really good and not properly. Now let's take a look at the shadow detail, at the sink. I think it's called the sink, I actually don't know. So we cannot see much, and we have much noise here. Of course, if you use a different picture style, you won't have maybe this much noise in the shadows. However, you won't have as much dynamic range too. So as you can see here, this looks really bad. Look like it's melting together, and this looks horrible. We could try to denoise this, but this will also eliminate much detail from the little detail we have left. So not very nice at all. So now let's take a look again at the highlights for the Blackmagic camera. So let's look at this wall. I just actually I exposed this camera so really the zebras were only going away. So when we turn this down really much, you can see right here it looks that nice, and we have some sort of artifacts here. On the left side, actually this is the color of the building from the opposite of our window. It does not look nice when we turn it down, but we have this information, and it's somewhat, at least somewhat usable. And when we look at this area from the wall on the outside, we can drag it down really much, and it doesn't look too bad actually. So let's, in motion it doesn't look too good at all. Of course when we wanted it to be a bit dark, we wouldn't expose like this. But when we drag it down a bit, just maybe like this, you can really use this, and you have much texture there. Talking about texture, when we look at maybe the sink here again, we have grain here. Don't want to doubt that. And we have colored noise actually in the wall. However, looking at this, it's very organic in the noise, and we have details. One great thing about this comparison is, for example, this logo, the DLG logo. When we look at it in the Canon footage, you cannot even read that. And the best thing is this one. In the cupboard, there's a texture. There are these stripes on the door, and in the Canon footage there is none. Same as with the wall, where we have some texture of the wall at least. And I think for now this is a really good example what we can do with the Blackmagic footage compared to the Canon footage. Of course, you can also see the much increased detail we have in the Blackmagic footage. So now we don't stop here. We will look at 2 other examples. So let's grab the footage, the next footage, which is this nice scene here, and drag the Canon footage to it. Again, I was exposing, so the zebras were just going away. We'll make a new solid again, which we turn into adjustment layer. So I could have, what I want to show you is that when we drag this really much down, we don't get a nice clean sky. We have many artifacts here, and doesn't look too nice. Of course, we don't want to drag it down that much. However, when we drag it down like this, it's not really a problem anymore. You could also denoise it, of course. However, I could have exposed a bit more, with a bit more headroom for the sky, but I wanted to maintain the shadow detail. I will show you that in a minute. However, let's take a look at the Canon sky. For the Canon, the sky looks not bad too, so I exposed it like that the sky is usable. As you can see, this looks not the same, but there's a comparison between this sky and this sky. at least regarding the detail and the quality. Of course, you have a bit less, you have a bit more compression artifacts, but be it that way. We want to say Canon that this worked out pretty good. But now let's look at the shadow detail. We start at the Canon here. So let's take a look at the woods. As you can see, it's very muddy. Again, in motion, that's even worse. And this is some sort of noise you get out very, very badly with the denoising tool. Of course, the picture style is also a bit into this noise, of course, but then we didn't have this dynamic range. So we can see this is not good. This does not look good, and it's really hard to delete this noise, because when we do, we also delete a lot of detail that we have in the woods. Now let's take a look at the Blackmagic footage. So suddenly, we can see that this tree actually has a texture. It's noisy, no doubt. It's noisy. We have noise. But when you get this out, you don't have that much of a problem. You have real texture in this tree, just like not here, but here. You have real texture, and you can see nearly can see single leaves, which is not possible here. So clarity, detail is much better in the shadows in comparison, and we have much more to work with. So let's look at the last example. This one is a really nasty shot. So I was standing behind a tree with really low leaves, and the sun was around here, so this area was really bright lit. So it's not really a wonder. Call this curves again, add the curves filter. It's no wonder that when we drag down the curves here for the Canon footage, that this area is completely overexposed. That's no wonder. Also, it's no wonder because we were standing in the shadows and looking through the hell brightly lit scene, that we don't have much detail back here in the leaves again. And again, in motion, this looks really horrific. Let's look at the Blackmagic footage, and suddenly we can see leaves again. And they are also much nicer graduated. What we also can see is in some leaves we have texture. You can see the texture of the leaf, like in this one. In motion also doesn't look perfect. However, much better in comparison, at least. We have detail. We can see something. It's noisy, but it's not that blurred. It's not that kind of nasty digital noise we have in the Canon footage. It's more like a film grain. And let's drag this one down, and as you can see, it doesn't look nice again. It doesn't look nice in the sky, but we can drag it down to a certain level, and we have information in this area. I could have exposed so that this area also clips, because I don't need it. If you wanted to, you can always clip such areas and have even more headroom in the shadows. But as you can see, that doesn't help much with the Canon footage. With this footage, it's totally possible. And I encourage you to just grab the clips from the web space and just look at them for yourself to compare the dynamic range of these two shots. And I think it may not be the best comparison and maybe not the most valid one, and there could be better comparisons with picture styles and so on and so on. However, I think it pretty much proves the point why this camera is so amazing in quality. So let's take a look at the sharpness detail of this camera. As you know, the Canon DSLRs are not the sharpest and most detailed on planet Earth, so I decided to drop them by and simply use the DH2, which is far superior in sharpness for this comparison. One thing we have to know about before we start this is that the Panasonic DH2 recorded in 25p, just as the Blackmagic cinema camera. However, we have to change the settings for this file. This is very simple because the HVCHD specification 1.0, there's 2.0 now, but the 1.0 didn't plan to use 25p in their containers. But Panasonic wanted to provide us Europeans with this feature, so they packed the 25p footage into a 50i container. What you can see here, as it tells us, is it's separating upper field first. And when we just set this to off, you can see it right there. It looks much sharper right away. So let's set it to off and that's okay. As I mentioned before, this camera was hacked with the Cake 2.3 hack, which doubles the bitrate. And so we should get a better image out of the GH2. So it doesn't look too bad here. We have some nice detail in the beard, we have some nice detail in the single hairs here. It doesn't look too bad, and 100% is perfectly fine. Now let's take a look at the Blackmagic camera in comparison. Got this on top, and as you see, this is the video camera, a lot more contrasty. However, we have some color fringing in the hairs. This could be many things. I think this is more rail aliasing from the sensor, something we don't get from the GH2, but what we also don't get from the GH2 is this much detail. When you look at this area closely, you can see much more detail in here from the Blackmagic camera, and also single hairs are much better to see in this. Of course you would expect this from a camera like this, however, this looks really much better in terms of detail and sharpness compared to a camera that is decently sharp and great for HD video, much better than Canon DSLRs. So I don't know what to tell you actually about this here, because you can see this very good, I think. One thing I want to show you also is, let's get a new solid, call this Sharpen. Let's look at the ability of sharpen these images. So let's get a sharpen filter and maybe deactivate the Blackmagic footage for now and set the sharpen filter to maybe 10. I would sharpen actually a bit different normally, but for this video it's close enough so we can see this. So we get a sharper image out of this, of course. We don't increase detail, that we don't ever do this with such things. However, we get a subjectively sharper image. When we now set on the Blackmagic footage and see it with and without sharpening, we get an even more sharp image, and it's really great sharpness we can receive from this camera. You can easily sharpen this. You can really set the sharpen filter way higher, I guess. I didn't try this before. So now this looks really overcranked, of course. But as you can see, the noise gets a bit more, but not too bad. This could be used in some way, and this looks really sharp. It looks really sharp. I mean, it's a bit too sharp, of course, but it could be usable for some sort of effect. Now, when we look at the GH2, not so much. Doesn't look too good, in my opinion, in comparison, of course. So that's it. You can see even a very good sharp HD camera gets punished by the Blackmagic Cinema camera in terms of sharpness and detail. So let's take a look at the Blackmagic Cinema camera footage alone for the Lowlight capabilities. So this is not a Lowlight cam, and not like a 5D Mark III or a Sony FS100. However, the Lowlight isn't that bad. This was shot at 180 degree shutter, 1600 ASA, and it was also shot only at an aperture of 2.8. So you can get more out of this camera, but just for this shot, just so you know this, these are the settings. However, let's get a curves adjustment. So the goal when I shot this was that the lighting advertising here doesn't get clipped, and it does not get clipped. Very good, we have the information where we want it. So this is pretty cool. What will clip actually are these lights. It's a bit hard to not make them clip. And also these lights, they will also clip. At least at some level they will clip. However, this advertising does not. And let's have a look at the shadows that we maintain in this footage. This is a shot in lock video gamma, lock gamma, not lock video gamma, only lock gamma. So not too bad. We have pretty much detail in this tree. We can see the texture, we can see leaves here. It's not nearly as horrible as on a GH2 or a Canon DSLR camera. So just for, let's do something. Let's add a reduce noise effect. from Neat Video, which is my preferred choice. So this is very dark to look at. Maybe we can crank this up a little bit. Do auto profile. Let's select this area, which is nice and uniform. And you can see we get the noise out really good. This is a great thing because we get out the noise and don't delete too many details. We can also, of course, maybe adjust this a bit on how we want to really reduce this. However, for this case, for this occasion, it will be enough for the demonstration. Just so you know, you can get the noise really good out of this footage, which is pretty amazing, which is not capable with the Canon DSLRs or GH2, in the night at least. So, now we have this not too bad looking footage. When we scrub through this, we see that there is not much noise left. Of course it's not perfect, it's a bit muddy in this area, but this is fine, for me at least. So maybe we crank it up even a bit more, not too much, so we don't want to clip the advertising that I try to maintain. Maybe let's add a hue and saturation effect and add some saturation to this. So it's a bit nicer, maybe. Maybe we change the hue just a bit. Or maybe in the curves we add a little bit of blue. So, doesn't look too bad for the night at f2.8. Of course, this may not, maybe you think this looks not good. This is not good enough for your work or for professional work or whatever, but when you consider that we started at this point, I think this is pretty damn amazing. But this may only be me. So, that's it. This is how good this camera can look in low light. Now let's take a look at the low light capabilities in comparison to the 550D and the GH2. I took some ISO settings from both cameras. Also, for this comparison, I decided to use the neutral setting picture style over the flat picture style for the 550D because the flat picture style is really horrible in the night. However, I shot with the Blackmagic camera at 1600 ASA, and funny enough, this matched better with both other cameras at ISO 3200 than at 1600. However, you can decide this for yourself because you can also download that footage. So now let's hop in and let's take a look at the footage. So this is the Canon 550D at ISO 3200. Every camera had the same lens on at f2.8, so you can get out more of this. But for the field of view comparison, I had to use that lens. So let's take a look at the Canon. As we see, we don't see much. We don't have much detail in this building here. Not in the bushes or in the sky at all. In motion, you can really see how bad the noise is, how bad this is. Let's take a look at the GH2. The GH2, from my experience, is a bit better in low light than the Canon DSLRs, at least anything under the 5D Mark III. And the noise is also there. It's not nice, but if you ask me, a bit better than on the Canon. We have a little bit more detail in the bushes, but we don't have as much detail in this area. You can see this here. This might be also because the GH2 doesn't has a lower dynamic range than the Canon DSLR cameras. So does not look too good. Now let's take a look at the Blackmagic camera. So what's pretty obvious right away is that it's noisy, of course, like other album cameras, but we have much detail in the bushes. We have some detail, and the noise isn't as flocky and as muddy as in the other shots, but we have some more of an organic grain texture. But we have still much details in the high dynamic range. As you can see in this light, this area clips where the bulb is. However, all the other footages, also the shining of the lamp is clipping. This does not happen to the Blackmagic camera. So now let's look at the details. So I will use curves adjustment. I will get a curves adjustment and I will do a adjustment layer again, creating a solid, make it to adjustment layer and drop it on there. So we start from the top again. So now let's take a look at the 550D. What we can see now is that here is still a building in the background. It's pretty cool that we could capture this. Also, we could capture pretty much things out here in the dark with the trees, which is pretty nice. Also, we can see we captured some info here. Still, this does look even more horrific than before regarding the noise, which is pretty obvious, of course. Now let's take a look at the GH2. So on the GH2, we see the GH2 doesn't like skies, at least not black skies. So when you pump this up, it actually looks worse than on the Canon, if you ask me. Of course, at this given picture style, this could dramatically change when you use a higher dynamic range picture style, like Cine style or flat, in this example. So it doesn't look too good here. What we also can see is in this area we have a lot less information on the GH2 camera. So now let's take a look at the Blackmagic camera, and still we have plenty of noise, which is a little bit sharp, this noise, but we have also a lot of detail, We can see the building just like on the 550D in the background. We can see the trees, and we have much detail here. Also, this area here is really detailed in comparison, so we can really see the texture of this. And this is actually pretty nice. I think it's pretty obvious how good this camera can perform. Of course, it's not a low light camera, it's not a Sony FS100, and it's not a Canon 5D Mark III. However, the results we get from this camera in low light are not really bad, at least considerably better than the other two cameras. And this is something to start with. I would even say it might be better than the 5D Mark II easily, but I cannot test this because I don't have access to one right now. So, I also already applied reduced noise effects from Neat Video on these clips, and we will just set them on again, so we have the comparison how it could look when we denoise this image. And the fun thing is, when we denoise the Blackmagic camera footage, it looks really good. I mean, really good. I mean, we can pull out really much from this image still, even though it's now we clip a bit, of course, here with the curves, but even though there's not information there, and this is a 2.8 lens again, we get much information out of this, and this is a totally usable image. Maybe if you now apply some color correction and some grading, higher desaturation, make a nice look on it, you can really use this footage. And I wouldn't really say this from this footage, which looks horrible. In the building, the noise is very bad. So here it's a bit better, but not good either. And this gets considerably worse with a different picture style. This is also usable to some point, but I wouldn't be happy with this actually. And we have to keep in mind that this is ISO 3200, so we need the higher ISO on these cameras. Of course, these cameras shouldn't be used at ISO 3200. This is no question, out of the question. But still, the Blackmagic camera has some sort of thick exposure at this ASA setting. So it's maybe not the fairest comparison, but as we use the same lens, I wanted to get around the same exposure, and this is what we have to do with this. So in my opinion, the Blackmagic camera really outperforms both of these cameras here, and it's not a low light camera, I said it again. However, it's actually not the worst performer and performs actually pretty good in low light, which is, I think, a really nice thing. But see for yourself, download the footage and see for yourself. So that's it already. I hope I could give you some sort of impression of what this camera is capable of and what we can do with the footage and why it is so great to have this sort of material even in the compressed formats. So long, thanks for watching, and I see you next time. Bye!